This is Pro Series Off Topic.
Welcome back to Pro Series Off Topic. This is episode 89. I hope you enjoyed Pro Series this past week. That was with Crystal Van Jura, episode 169, called Beyond the Countertop, a deep dive with Crystal Van Jura. She is from Van Jura Surface Products out in North Huntington. It was an in-person podcast, so if you want to head over to YouTube or Spotify, you could watch it. Great episode. We shot it from their showroom, but in the kitchen part of the showroom where they do cooking events and stuff. We talk all about it. It's a really cool backstory of how they got created, but we talked a lot about design and the history of design, not just in Pittsburgh, but in materials and quartz. And I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot. I did get a lot of DMs about back in the day of quartz and the stories that Crystal told about, like there was no real standard thickness of quartz and what they had to do to create a very nice seamless look, or not even a seamless look, it was a seamed look. So head over to anywhere you listen to podcasts, listen to episode 169 with Crystal Van Jura. Next week we're continuing our Pittsburgh guests. We have on 170 with Dr. Preston Mullins. He is a chiropractor here in Pittsburgh, and we go on for I think it's over an hour podcast. So head over to that midweek and listen to that. It's another great episode. We kind of talk about the revolution of chiropractic services and how it kind of took the world by storm on TikTok, and he's done a very good job with it and in social media in general. And we talk about that craze of how many people are just like glued to chiropractic TikTok or chiropractic social media, just seeing these patients just get cracked. And it's a really cool episode, so stay tuned to that midweek, and all can be coming out. But as you probably have seen the past probably 3 or 4 months, back and forth between me, Adrian Ramsey, and Greg Smith, both they're my most guest people on my podcast. We have been going back and forth with different things. I haven't made a topic yet, so it's my turn to make it the topic. And I want to talk about what is one photo. I mean, there's so many times you look through these magazines and you see these awesome designs. They look so cool. One thing I have to remind myself is design is so subjective, especially when it comes to commercial work. I think residential work, you need to be a little bit more functional because it's where someone's living. But I wanted to kind of point it into Greg and Adrian's and Dario's direction of what is one photo this past week or lately that you've seen of design that has just blew your mind, of like every single thing in your design portfolio, it just screams what is going on here. And I want to show you this photo. Head over to Eric Doman Designs. It is a wall full of lumber. It's stacked almost, if you're looking at it dead on, it looks like stacked stone, which I love the look of stacked stone. But when you think of stacked stone, yes, there's different variation of the stone, but it's centimeters or millimeters away. So there's not really a lot of overlap, and there's not a lot of stone sticking out super far. This one, it looks like it looks like a lumber yard basically. And maybe this person, I didn't read the whole story of the architect or the designer on this project and the owner of the project and what they were looking for. It looks really cool, but from a functionality standpoint, that's kind of how I design. I want to make sure the space makes sense to who's living there and the future of that space. Figuring out who's going to live there next, and is it going to cause an issue when you go to sell it. And this photo is just a bunch of lumber. It's probably variations from maybe 2 inches to 16 inches or something, and they're all staggered. And I'm just looking at it thinking, it looks cool now when it's installed, but how do you dust that thing? That's what goes through my mind. There's no way that wall is going to look clean all the time. That's going to take months to clean this. So head over to Eric Doman Designs and look at that. I'm excited to see what Adrian, Greg, and Dario come up with. But that's just one of the photos that kind of stopped me in my tracks this week and just blew my mind from a functionality standpoint. Next up, I want to talk about designing for yourselves as a designer or someone in the construction industry. Designing for yourself as a designer is very, very hard. I think a lot of people think it's fun, and it is fun to an extent. But when I say hard, you are probably your hardest client as a designer because you're seeing all the new materials, technology, everything on a daily basis. That's your job to stay up to date. So as you do your job, the moment you say yes to a tile or an appliance or something, the next day a new appliance comes out or a new material comes out or you come across a new material and you're already second guessing what you're doing. So going through your own designs is just a bunch of second guessing, and that's what kills me. And the one that really kills me the most is paint color. Paint color is the hardest thing for me to pick for myself. That's why mostly black is where I go because you can't go wrong. It kind of goes with everything. And like a black and a beige or a black and a white, it's just a classic look that I don't think will ever go out of style. But designing for yourself is so dang hard when you're in the design and construction industry, in the know-all of all of the products, all the materials coming out on a constant basis, going to trade shows all the time. You are constantly figuring out like, hey, I want this, I want that, I want this, but you also can't, you know, pay for that all the time. You don't have the budget to do that all the time. So it's kind of hard to do that. I think a lot of people think, oh, designer, that's probably so fun to do your own place. It is to an extent. It is during the time, and then once you press or you sign the contract or you buy the materials, you're second guessing it all the time. And I don't know if anybody else goes through this. If you're a designer or in the construction, you do actually do the work. You notice every little mistake that you did during it, and maybe that's just being a perfectionist. But that's why, like when I did my kitchen project, I made sure I hired someone for the tile because I knew if I did the tile, I would notice every little thing about it. And I'm so glad I did because I do notice some stuff, but in it, but I allow it to roll off. But that's kind of what I want to talk about designing for yourself. It's really hard, and I know there's another designer out there that also suffers from designing from yourself because it is a very hard thing to do when you're seeing and feeling all these new materials every single day. Lastly, for subjects, I want to talk about because there's no country music to talk about this week. I'm sorry, there just really wasn't much, so I'm not going to really get into it. I will talk about the media base chart, but let's talk about a different subject. This is a song, but this song is not country music related. It is the a classic bop, if that's what the kids are saying, or a classic banger, and that is Snow Miser and Heat Miser song from A Year Without a Santa Claus. You know what really bugs me is, and I think it's a huge issue for all of us Christmas music lovers, is the Year Without a Santa Claus soundtrack is not on any streaming platform. And let me rephrase that: none of the Year Without a Santa Claus official soundtrack or songs are on streaming platforms. And you're probably thinking, Eric, you're a nerd, you need to stop. But Snow Miser and Heat Miser is a great song, guys. Like, don't sleep on that. That song is great. Really, the only time you could listen to it is if you're watching it on TV or you go to YouTube. But I was trying to find it to put it on my Christmas playlist that I listen to pretty much 24/7 from September to December, and it's nowhere to be found. It's a bunch of covers on Apple Music, and I am not for that. I want the actual real version, and I want someone to start a petition because I don't want to live in a world where Snow Miser and Heat Miser song is not the official soundtrack, is not on any streaming platform. We need this. This needs to be changed. I don't know who I need to talk to, who I need to email, but this song has been out since 1974. We need this on streaming platforms. We need Snow Miser and Heat Miser on music platforms. Please release it. I've been holding that in for probably a couple months since I've watched it, but please just do that. Let's get into country music media base chart. This week, number 5 from 6 last week, Morgan Wallen, Love Somebody. Huge leap because that song is fairly new to the charts. Number 4 this week, Dylan Marlowe and Dylan Scott, Boys Back Home. Number 3, Co Wetzel and Jesse Murph, High Road. Number 2 this week, George Burge and Cowboy Songs. And number 1 this week from 3 last week, Ella Langley and Riley Green, You Look Like You Love Me. Great song, great 2 artists. That's all I have this week. Hope you enjoyed this off topic. If you have not listened to 169 with Crystal Vanjera on Pro Series, go check that one out now. In the meantime, and then wait for Dr. Preston Mullins to come out this week for Pro Series midweek. But other than that, I hope you have a great rest of the weekend.